have recovered from burnout as a vet. I still do some relief work, but I've also created Life Boost with Amelia, where I do coaching. And so I've been able to pursue all these things and going down so many different rabbit holes, just of like trying to get to the root of why so many people, are trying hard and not feeling the way that they want to.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I am excited to have Dr. Amelia Knight Pinkston. Amelia is a multi-passionate recovered burnout vet and integrative health and life coach. She's certified in integrative change work, hypnosis, veterinary medical acupuncture, and is co-chair of the Veterinary Genesis Initiative. Amelia, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I think we were talking a little bit before hit record, but I think there's really so much for us to talk about here. So thank you for coming and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat today.
Awesome. Will you start by just telling people your story? I gave a very, very high level, but I think there's a ton to talk about. And so let's just start, let people know about you and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good place to start is my name, because I feel like that kind of summarizes my journey. So Amelia means industrious. And really that natural drive to be working hard is really what led me to the lowest and highest points of my life. At the lowest point a few years ago, I was a burnt out vet. I just was really deeply regretting my decision to become a vet. But I felt really stuck. And, up until that point, I decided I wanted to be a vet when I was like 6. And I had worked so hard to achieve that dream. And so it was really confusing when I found myself living my dream, and it really was feeling more like a nightmare. And there was a point when I was just sitting on my couch, and it finally started to open a door for me where I was just feeling really sorry for myself, thinking about like all the reasons why I was stuck in this career. Like I had worked my entire life to get to that point, my student loans, what others would think of me. And just for a moment, I allowed myself to think, so if all of those things just weren't problems, then what would I do? And that really just like opened this door to this cage that I had really like unknowingly created for myself. And it allowed me to stop judging and to start getting curious. And that really led me on this path towards this highest point where I am now, and really just getting curious about, why was I feeling this way? What did I need? Why was my dream not feeling like I thought it would? And learning how to listen to my body and support my energy in order to really get to this high point where I have recovered from burnout as a vet. I still do some relief work, but I've also created Life Boost with Amelia, where I do coaching. And so I've been able to pursue all these things and going down so many different rabbit holes, just of like trying to get to the root of why so many people, are trying hard and not feeling the way that they want to, and seeing how all these things are connected and understanding how to really, what true health and success looks like. And so that's where I'm also doing coaching, and also just really passionate about creating positive change in the vet profession. Because before we started recording, we were just talking about, there is such a high burnout and suicide rate in the veterinary profession, and most people outside of this profession really don't realize that. And so at first, at that lowest point, I just wanted to flee the vet profession, and really and learning how to support my own energy while working hard, that's really created a passion to be speaking out on how we can be creating a new norm in vet med that is sustainable.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, you're probably a very good coach, because even as you were talking, I had all these things kind of pop into my head. We talked about before we hit record how there's that huge discrepancy between like how we see the veterinary profession from within versus people outside of it are looking, and it's like, oh, you just play with puppies and kittens all day. And
Exactly.
what just struck me in your story, you said, oh, when I was 6 years old, I wanted to do this. And it's fun. That's
Yeah,
like, not that you don't have you have a unique path, but like so many of us, that's it, right? Like when you're a kid, you're like, I
totally.
love animals, I want to help animals. And it's funny, so what kind of just the connection that just came to me is that at that time you have the same thought of veterinary medicine as everybody else that's not in veterinary medicine, right?
Yeah,
As a
so
six
true.
year old, we're like, we love puppies and kittens. I would like to play with them forever, and I would like to
Right.
help them. Like that's kind of
Yeah, who
what you
wouldn't,
think,
right?
right? Exactly. And it's like, the other funny thing to that is like when you hear people, sometimes like I have family members or clients, and they'll say, you know, oh, it's amazing what you do. I just couldn't deal with if you have to do a euthanasia or something, like I couldn't deal with
Every
seeing
time.
them sick, right?
Mhm.
And so it's what, for whatever reason, those of us that went into the field never had that realization before. We thought we could help them, and then you mentioned, kind of all the work that you have to do to get there. And we've talked a little bit about it on the show before, but just tell people kind of the path. I mean, tell people about, kind of what it takes to get to vet school, to become a vet, like all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think that's almost one of the problems is because vet school selects for very
Yeah.
driven high achievers because it is so selective, even just to get into vet school. So that selection process, you really need to have we need to have been busy, right? Like we need to have, had perfect grades, and we need to have volunteered and done all of the extracurriculars, and also, showed that we do understand the realities of vet med by putting in the hours there. And so, even before we get into vet school, they've kind of been selecting for those who are willing to self-sacrifice a little bit
Yeah.
and just keep, really that like no pain, no gain mindset. And then, yeah, then we go into vet school. And I don't know about you, but maybe you had a different experience, but I felt like I worked hard in high school and college, but it is just like a whole nother
Yeah.
level in vet school.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
I think maybe this is everybody, but for some reason I always thought the next level would get a little bit easier, for
Right.
whatever reason. Like you always thought, in high school, you're like, this is tough, but college will probably be more fun. And then college was hard, and you're like, oh, let's see what vet school is going to be like. And then like vet school is like dramatically harder than college. Like it was just
Oh my gosh.
constant classwork. I mean, we would have like 3 exams a week. It was just just always, you were
Totally.
always going. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until fourth year when you kind of go into your clinical work, and I really enjoyed the clinical side, but still it was a ton of hours, right? It's
Oh
like
my
you're
gosh.
just there
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
There is no like outside of school life. And so
Exactly.
and then it was like, well, and I'm not sure if you did internship or residency or anything like that, but like it just kept going. Like my internship's like, that was twice as hard as vet school, and then the residency was like twice, and it just kept going.
Oh yeah.
And then I got out, and I thought, it's going to be better, once I'm done
Mm.
with all this. And it really wasn't. Like it was just like, it just keeps going. There's still more, there's always more work to do, I guess, is kind of what it comes down to. And so you can imagine from, that story, our both of our, commonalities there in the path, like it's not hard for me to imagine why people get burnt out. It's not hard for me to imagine why the suicide rate is high in veterinary profession. Like it's tragic, and I wish it weren't that way, but it's like,
Yeah.
I've said this to many people, like I have 2 young kids. I don't want them in the vet field. My wife's a tech. I don't want my kids to follow in our footsteps. I really
Right.
don't, because I see the struggles that, especially like the young people that, that are coming out of school now and, faced with huge student loans and things like that. So anyway, a little off track, but the
Oh,
point is,
yeah.
there's so many things that you don't know about when you're getting, like, when you're going into it, and there's so many things that people outside of our profession just don't know. So
Totally. Yeah. And I think what you said is such an important point of that mindset of like, I'm going to work really hard now because things are going to be better in the future. But noticing that every time you reach that, there's just like something else. And I think that really is one of the key things that is draining us. We're not learning how to be getting that like feeling that we're trying to get in the present, or like supporting our energy while we're working towards that. It's more like I'm just gonna like be running on empty because I think that there's some they're going to get a break
right.
in the future. And I think I heard from another episode that you had that like you also took some time off in between like undergrad and vet school. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like there's definitely that part of me that, like I came up with that dream when I was 6 and I wanted to be working with animals, but I was aware that of some of the realities of the profession. And I took that year off because I really wanted to be like, is this really something that I want? And I still decided to go into vet school, and yet I still ended up getting burnt out. And so that's what's really,
Yeah.
really drives me to get to the root of why that's happening.
Yeah. It is it's, I guess the reality is that, like, many people are already burnt out when they're starting working,
Totally.
right? Like you're
Yep.
already burnt out from all of the stuff that led up to getting this job as a veterinarian, that you go into your first job in this, what was your dream career, uh, already burnt out. You're already exhausted. And it's like, I hear, so many people come out of vet school and they're like, I got to start working right now because I need money, right? Like
Right.
I got to start, like, there's no break in between. I see people, I used to train surgery residents. It's like, so, they finish their residency and like, oh, I'm starting my new job next week. And it's like, you just, you've forget, well, yeah, forget the fact that you've just been working your tail off for a lot of years.
Yeah.
You also have all these school loans and debt and things like that in most cases. And so, people are faced with that, kind of financial brick wall right in front of them, that they're like, I got to
Yeah.
start working so I can pay my bills. And so it's just it is a challenging spot to be in. And I, if you don't mind, tell us about, share what you're comfortable with, but I mean, kind of tell us about that time when you realized you were, sort of in that burnt out place and you had to make a change. Like,
Yeah.
how did that look for you?
Yeah. I think that's a great question because I really was in denial for a long time. And as I look around at other, vet professionals, I think that that's a case for a lot of people. I thought that I was doing everything to be healthy and successful. Like I thought that I was eating well, I was exercising a lot because that was like my one form of stress management. And, I was working really hard. I was definitely struggling with imposter syndrome at that time. But I started to have signs in my body that things weren't working for me. Despite doing all those healthy things, I felt exhausted. I was starting to have like these crippling stomach aches that would just happen anytime. And I visited with doctors and they really didn't have answers, even with doing tests. And, I was even having this brain fog in the afternoons, just kind of feeling like it was hard to focus, kind of like spacey. And even with feeling those things for a long time, I was just kind of like, well, this is normal. And I remember eventually just being like, probably not everyone feels really spacey and weird after lunch every single day. And so at that point, I started to, when the traditional doctors weren't helping to get to the root of why I was so tired, I did visit with some functional medicine practitioners, and just sitting in the doctor's office, she just asked me the simplest question, like, are you happy as a veterinarian? And just all of a sudden, this huge wave of emotions came over me. Like, I felt like I wanted to burst into tears, and I didn't even know that I had been keeping that inside of me. And that was a little bit of a wake up call of that really I maybe wasn't okay. And that wasn't a convenient thing to realize, because it was I knew that I was stressed. But if someone asked me like how I was doing, I'd be like, I'm good, stressed, but good. Like and then I would just list all the reasons why I loved being a vet, because that was a much better and more convenient reality than the fact that
Fits the
I
narrative.
was, yeah, right. And so I think that is one of the key things in the vet profession, but also just in our society, is that so many of us aren't really recognizing the signs that we are stuck in survival mode, or what's called a trauma response, which I think can sound misleading in a way. With a trauma response, really just think about that can happen anytime the body encounters more stress than you can process in the moment. And if we think about, the path to become a veterinarian, there are so many stressors. And
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but for me, I not once was I taught like anti-anxiety or stress relieving technique, aside from exercise, to just have a pop-off valve for that stress and to be releasing it from my body. And so I think we do see in the vet profession signs that everyone is stuck in survival mode, like that cynicism, being a workaholic, lack of boundaries, people pleasing, imposter syndrome. Um, and so I think that if the more we can talk about those signs of being in like fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, that's really going to be the first step to help others who may be feeling in denial or not even realizing how much stress is impacting their life.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
Yeah.
long answer.
No, I love it. I mentioned earlier that a big part of sort of shifted my focus with the podcast, with our fund is awareness and in understanding just what you said, that in understanding. So again, it's like people outside of the veterinary profession don't realize that, right?
Yeah.
And so part of what I want is, if you're listening to this, you're not a vet, maybe you have pets, like, can you just recognize the stress that your vet and their staff is under when you bring your pet there, and maybe just be a little bit more patient. I can't tell you the number of clients that I have had lately, interestingly, that when I've consulted with them and they're not really complaining about me, but they're like, it took me X amount of time to get a call back and blah, blah, blah. And I think there's really a problem here in all of this. And I'm like, I want you to understand something. Like, the number of pets doubled during the pandemic. The number of pets in the US doubled in the pandemic. And the number of vets and the number of technicians went down. So
Yeah,
it's just not possible
it
for
really isn't.
us to do it all. It's just not possible. There just isn't the manpower anymore. And
Yeah.
so, I think I honestly don't know what happens when people go to their doctor, their pediatrician, their sort of own medical team. I don't know what happens if they go there and get, you know, angry and frustrated and belligerent. I'm really not sure. I don't live in that
Right.
world, but I know that's what happens to us, and it's really not acceptable. And that's the thing that I think, that's one of the things I would like to come out of this, is like have a little bit of understanding for what your veterinarian and what their team are going through, and that will allow them to have more understanding in return to the stress that you're under for bringing your sick pet in. Like it's just like,
Right.
if everybody's a little bit more human to each other, it will be
Yes.
it will make things go a long way. So I think that that's an important component of this, is understanding that it's, there's a lot of different stresses. One of them is financial. One of them is the hours worked. One of them is that every single animal that we treat, which is why we all got in the profession, because we want to fix animals,
Right.
comes with an owner. And
Yeah.
so I think I've like joked about this before, but it's like, I feel like, probably 75%, if not more, of veterinarians became veterinarians because they wanted to be a doctor, but they didn't want to deal with people.
Yeah.
But we mistakenly didn't realize that all of those
Yeah.
pets have a person.
They
And
sure
so,
do.
yeah, it's like it's a profession filled with like extreme introverts that are
Yeah.
then never taught the tools to to deal with people, because there's too much else to learn while you're going through all these steps.
Right.
You don't talk about finances, you don't talk about client communication. There's like none of that stuff happens, and then you're thrust into a job where you have 20 minutes to see an appointment, and you have to examine, figure out everything that's wrong with that pet, and then explain it to the owner. And it's just not possible. Like realistically, it's just not possible to do that and also have understanding, compassion, the time to listen to the client. Like it's just
Right.
like these are
The
things,
time.
and some people are going to say, "We'll have longer appointments," but they don't want to pay more for longer appointments. So
Right.
there's just like there's a lot of pressure in, kind of from all directions. So again, it's like, as someone on the inside, it's like I I have now constructed my veterinary career in such a way that it's great. Like I'm very
Yeah.
happy with the way
Yeah.
I
Same.
get to manage my time, and so yeah, the clients aren't upset with me because I take my time with them, but I have built it
Yeah.
that way. And I think there's just so much pressure to keep doing it the way it used to be, um, and not adapt to this new world. And also, again, just the numbers. There are not enough vets coming out of vet school to
Mm-hmm.
fill the positions that are available. So it's
Yeah.
not getting better. And if something doesn't change to make it a better profession, guess what? People aren't going to keep becoming vets. They're going to, I just told you, like,
Yeah.
I don't want my kids in this field. So
Yeah.
it's like people are going to see those things. And so it's not going to get better unless we can do something about it. And I think, I mean, I don't have any illusions that you or I can change everything, but I
Mm.
think the idea here is we can do our part and do as much as we can to sort of better the situation and raise awareness. So,
Yeah.
sorry, rambling, but it's
No,
something I'm very
those are
passionate
so
about,
good
and I think
points.
it gets missed. But I wanted to kind of ask you, like, what do you what tools do you use? What tools do you teach people when you're coaching? Like, what are your I guess tools as far as dealing with some of this? I think a lot of people
Yeah.
figure it out on their own,
Right.
oftentimes not in a healthy way, right? Like they're
Yeah.
drugs, alcohol, other whatever it is, like things that to deal with the stress. But obviously, those aren't the healthy ways. Like, what do you do? What do you teach people that you're coaching to do to help manage these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've definitely spent a lot of time trying to get to like the root of why is that burnout happening? Because like you said, I mean, we are losing people and we desperately need more people in this profession. So we need to be figuring out how can we keep people and help to create an environment where they can thrive. Um, and so I've created a free series for the veterinary community called Beat the Burnout, What We Should Have Learned in Vet School. And that kind of outlines like 4 steps that I think are really important for individuals and hospitals. And this absolutely applies to those outside of veterinary medicine as well, to help to connect with how you can be working towards your goals and being successful in a way that is sustainable. And so the first is just shifting out of survival mode. So when I'm working with clients, like the first thing that I do is I empower them with anti-anxiety tools that they can use absolutely anywhere. Because, if we think about stress in our bodies, is kind of like air in a balloon, right? And so a balloon is designed to accommodate quite a bit of air, but at a certain point, even just like the tiniest bit of air, so a tiniest bit of stress, or a little bit of pressure from the outside, that's enough to make it pop. And so much of us are walking around that way. And so when we have someone like, a disrespectful client, that's enough to make us pop. And so we really need to be having like a pop off valve so that we can be shifting into a calmer state so that you can be thinking more clearly. And the cool thing about anti-anxiety tools is those also serve as like a pattern interrupt. So many of the things that like are leading us to burnout, like maybe that tendency to just never, that perfectionism, maybe people pleasing, anything like that. Or maybe just even like choosing food that we don't really want to because we're stress eating. When you use an anti-anxiety tool, that helps to like put up a roadblock on that pattern in your brain. And that helps you to be in a place where you can start to create new habits and patterns. And so that's one of the first things that I teach. The second thing is that we really need to be establishing like a zero tolerance for bullies policy. And when I say that, I mean with clients, with peers, but also in the way that we're treating ourselves and our clients. And that really does start with talking about and recognizing signs of the trauma responses, that fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. And when we're noticing it, including in ourselves, like, oh, I'm not resting like I should, or, oh, I just totally overfilled my schedule, even though I now feel super resentful and irritated. Recognizing that and just pausing when we see that and getting curious, ditching that judgment and just thinking about why, either from my perspective or the perspective of the client who's maybe angry and is that showing a sign of like the fight response, why from their perspective are they feeling overwhelmed or threatened? And really identifying like what needs to happen to reestablish safety, either for yourself, or with this client. And, what you're talking about is such a common thing with clients just being really frustrated with us not doing things quickly enough.
Yeah.
And, even sometimes just helping them to feel seen and heard, of being like, I see that you're frustrated, and trying to get curious about what it really is at the root of that. Is it maybe that they're stressed because they don't have the finances and they're really worried about their pet, and trying to kind of meet them where they are to help them to feel heard. But if it's not possible to be establishing that like safety and mutual respect, then creating boundaries is huge to be protecting our energy. And especially, in veterinary hospitals, I as a relief vet, I do see that a lot, where it's kind of normalized to be catering to disrespectful clients. And for staff, that really, puts them in this position where they're subject to this verbal abuse without a way of escaping, without fear of negative consequences. And And that creates such an unsafe workplace. And why would anybody want to be going into work in a place where they have to deal with that? And so, going back to that, we need energy for things to be sustainable. Creating boundaries around the places where things are feeling unsafe and overwhelming is such a great way to get back so much energy. Um, and then the third is we need to replenish energy. And I think in there are so many ways that I support clients in doing that, but in the broadest sense, I really encourage people just to start observing, like, what are the things in your day that are boosting your energy, and what are the things in your day that are draining them. And there has to be more things that are boosting your energy than are draining them. Otherwise, if you're ending the day on empty and then the next day you're starting the day on empty, you know, we can have all the passion in the world to be saving animals, but that is just not sustainable. And so it is really important to start to connect with your why. I love that your podcast is all about that, because really getting to the root of why and like what is the feeling that you want when you think that you'll achieve that, that is a really helpful for creating a path and getting curious about, like, how can I start to connect with that feeling now. And if you think about any dreams that we have, like, at the root of that, when you think about, like, how is that going to make me feel, whether that is financial or with your career or with your health, you have this energy boost when you think about it, right? And so it's so important to think about, how along this path can I be supporting my energy? And that definitely involves looking at the basic necessities. The norm is really to ignore things like water, real food, rest, sunlight, fresh air, movement, those basic things so many of us treat like a luxury. And so really getting curious about how can we be prioritizing that is so important. And then, finally, the thing that I think we need to be doing is asking, like, how can we create an environment where it's convenient to thrive, right? Like in vet med and beyond, how can we be making it so that in the day there is time to be eating? Maybe there's time to even like get outside for like a short walk or breath of fresh air. Just connecting with those things that give you the fuel and the energy to make it through the day.
Yeah, I mean, all of it's great points. I'll give a little example, a personal example of the the lack of good eating that can happen when you're caught up in this. So, in my internship, for people listening and don't understand sort of the progression, right? It's vet school, then internship. Internship is 1 year, a 1 year intensive. In a lot of instances, the goal is that internship moves you on to a specialty, but it doesn't have to. But the point is, that's what it was for me. I wanted to be a surgeon. Intense year. For the first 4 to 5 months of my internship, and we were working, it was routinely 12 to 14-hour days, routinely, as a lot of internships unfortunately are. For the first 4 to 5 months of that, the only thing I ate through the day or drank was a package of Pop-Tarts and a Mountain Dew from the vending machine. For months, that's what I had for my sort of only sustenance during that whole time, because that's what I felt I had time to do. That was just it. And it's like, it was sort of like a joke, but it's like, but that's because that's almost normal. Like that's almost what happens. Like people go all day and don't eat. People go all day and haven't drank any water or whatever. Like that's a normal thing. And so it sounds simple, that you should prioritize those things, right? It sounds obvious maybe, but the reality is that's not always, it is possible, but it has to be made possible. It has to be made possible by the clinic or the environment that you're working in. And thankfully, there have been a lot of shifts towards that since I was an intern. That was many years ago. So
Yeah.
it is happening, but it's happening slowly over time, as change tends to be. I think that
Yeah.
the, sort of, you put out a lot of good examples, a lot of things there as far as the environment. You talked about the difficult clients and catering to them. I think that's another really great point, because sometimes a lot of places, most places now have medical records, right? And so you type in, you pull up a chart, and a lot of them have the ability to pop up notes. And oftentimes the note that pops up with one of these clients is like, difficult client, will be belligerent with the front, blah, blah, like all of these things.
Yeah.
And my immediate response is, why are they here?
Right.
Why do you
Exactly.
let them come back?
Yeah.
That's like, if it's my clinic, if I own that clinic, they're not
Mhm.
coming back. Like, that's just
Yeah.
not going to be, go find someone else who wants to accept that, because I'm not going to because as you said, like, the staff is not going to feel safe and supported in that environment, because unfortunately they take the brunt of it. There are a lot of clients that will come in and be difficult with the front desk, they'll be difficult with the technicians, and then they're
Mhm.
sweet as pie with the doctor.
Yeah.
And
Sadly.
I that actually makes me more mad than if you're
I'm with
difficult
you.
with me. I
Yeah.
like, if you don't treat my people well, we're
Yeah.
done. Like, that's it. You can go, because I don't, and I'll tell
Mhm.
people that right away. Like, all those people are doing what I'm asking them to. So if you have a problem with it,
Right.
then your problem is with me. Don't take it out on them. And I think it's just, but that's, again, it's just not the way that things are structured and set up. And so, in don't get me wrong, there's the majority of clients are good, kind
Absolutely.
people,
Mhm.
but it can be very hard when you get, like, you're in a busy day, and someone gets, you have one client that's like that. It'll really ruin people's days, because
Yeah.
they're right there in your face, or on the phone,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. So I think all these points you bring up in actually finding ways to take care of yourself, give yourself that energy, be conscious of the environment, and be, maybe when you're, if people are job hunting, looking at that, looking at the culture, looking at the
Yes.
environment, looking how, maybe ask them, how do you handle it when it's a difficult client here? What happens? Like, what's the
Definitely.
process? Like, that kind of thing would be, I think, so big in having what everybody wants as a employee, or as a, practice owner. You want sustainability, you want people to stay. And I think,
Exactly.
as a vet or technician, you want to stay somewhere, you want to find a place
Yes.
that you can stay. You don't want to be, bouncing around to jobs, which is what happens all the
Absolutely.
time. And it's like, so understanding, kind of what you can do for yourself, but also, like, looking for that appropriate environment to work in, I think, is such a
Mhm.
huge piece that, like, I don't, again, not a thing that you're, sort of taught in vet school. There's no
No.
class in your fourth year of vet school about finding a job, and there really should.
No, right, or boundaries or anything. Yeah. And I think that what you're talking about is such a good point. I think with those so many of those hospitals that are just catering to these clients that they know are going to be disrespectful, I think so much of that is rooted in that hospital is stuck in survival mode and that people pleasing and just thinking like, oh, we need this money, thinking about the numbers or that fear of a negative review and thinking about the ripple effect that that could cause. But I think, in all these cases, it's so important to look at what is the ripple effect of tolerating that
Right.
because, when you are dealing with a client who's being disrespectful, then what happens, then all, more staff are having to get involved. It's taking up time. Everybody's getting flustered and upset. Then other appointments are maybe going later than they should. People are running behind. And then these clients who you love and want to be there for, now they're having a terrible experience, and the staff is. And so it ends up being that, like, all of the people who are so important for the the real success of the hospital, now they're having a negative experience and potentially looking for ways out, while you're spending all that time and energy on a client who oftentimes they also aren't going to be, maybe bringing in, they're certainly not going to be bringing in enough to account for, low retention rates in the staff, or just overall negative culture.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, from just take the human element out of it, but I mean, just from a strictly revenue standpoint,
Yeah.
like I said, the vast majority of clients are wonderful.
Yeah.
So that catering to that one, what it does, the damage that it does outside of that is by allowing them to continue to be that way. I think clinics are like, oh, we have to get every case in. It's like, no, you don't. You really don't need to have every single case in. Like, you will make the rest of it and everybody else's experience much better, and your employee retention and, kind of just like the overall culture at that practice is going to be better if you don't cater to people that treat your staff that way. And honestly,
Yes.
probably if you don't cater to them, they'll stop.
Exactly. So often it's incredible if you just,
Right. If you just say
call them
something
out.
to them, like, this is
Yep.
not acceptable, usually it stops. Like, it's that there's
You're so
very
right.
few people that just, once they get caught, they're upset. They're up, something's wrong. So they're
Right.
there most of the time because their pet is sick and they're upset
Absolutely.
about that.
Right.
But if you tell them it's okay for you to be upset, but you can't treat everybody that way, usually that's the end of it. Like,
Um,
it's like simple human stuff. Like, it's
yeah.
just, instead of, and I think having a culture where that's accepted, that's supported, that you can say that,
Yes.
is going to go such a long way to overall practice health. Like,
Yes.
it's just, and it's just, say, like, being, you need to have, your, kind of staff have their backs, if you will. Like, you need to be
Yes.
in their corner, um, and understand those situations. I think that's just like a super important thing from a practice management, practice, ownership standpoint. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel like that's one of the lowest hanging fruits for creating positive change that a hospital can do, is just across the board establishing a zero tolerance for bullies policy. And that means, empowering every staff member with the ability to, if they are feeling in this unsafe space, having the ability to create a boundary, and knowing that their hospital backs them up in that. Just the level of energy they can get from that feeling of empowerment versus not having any control is huge. And of course, that also goes along with having those communication skills and talking with everybody about how you can be navigating conversations, and how can you be diffusing those situations and helping the client to just feel heard, because you're so right that they're often just really stressed because they're worried about their pet. And recognizing that common theme of everybody is worried
Right.
about
We
that,
all want the
right?
same thing. The
Exactly.
client wants the same thing that we want. Like, we want to fix the pet. They want you to fix the pet. So
Yep.
it's not really like, it's not a hard bridge or not a hard gap to bridge, right?
Right.
They want their pet to get better. We want their pet to get better. We
Yes.
just need to figure out how to, like, make that a healthy process, and empowering
Yeah.
people to um have those conversations. Or just think about this scenario, and maybe people outside the vet world haven't experienced this like we all have on a number of occasions, but you've got one angry client in a lobby full of other clients, right? And they're battling back and forth with the front desk. How far is it going to go for the practice owner, the hospital manager, whatever it is, to walk out there, pull them in a room and say, we want to help your pet, but you cannot treat people that way. So you can either leave now and not come back, or you can calm down and we can, help you. It's
Yeah.
going to make every person that was involved in that interaction, including all the other clients, have a positive vision of what this hospital is, of what this clinic is. And it's just, and people won't do it. And I understand it. It's like, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes those clients are scary.
Absolutely.
But it's something that it needs to be a part of it, whether you have that person that's not afraid to do it, or you have, you just have a culture of we won't put up with this. It
Yes.
will dramatically improve, sort of morale at the hospital.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the ripple effect in terms of the success for the hospital really is huge by doing something as small as that. Yeah. And you had mentioned one other thing that I think is important to highlight about how, everybody's just trying to like say yes to every patient that's coming in. And I think that does get to, what has driven so many of us into this profession of wanting to save any animal. And so I think I do often see, people working through lunch breaks, that type of thing, because they are having that mindset of like, I want to save every animal. Of course we do. And having so much guilt if you are, like taking a lunch break instead of
Yeah,
accepting, one more.
right.
And again, like expanding out and noticing that when we're doing that, what happens, if staff are overwhelmed and we're not having the time to be, educating and talking with clients and, doing a thorough physical exam, then we really aren't helping that animal to the best of our abilities, and really like changing the narrative of and creating a culture where we're putting our oxygen mask on first and really thinking about, what do I need in order to show up with energy so that I can, to the best of my ability, be helping the animals that I can, accepting that we alone are not going to be able to help every single animal, as hard of a reality as that is.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I, there's a million things we can talk about. We go on all day. I
Yeah.
I definitely want to have you back on, but I also don't want to keep you all day today. There's so many things in this like lane that we could go through and talk about, but
Yeah.
what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of switch gears here. I want to get to ask you the questions I ask every guest, Amelia, and
Okay.
again, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank
This is
you.
like these are such important things for people within and outside of the veterinary community to sort of understand, like, right, like first understand where those stress points come from. Second,
Yes.
understand what to do about them. And like, I mean, we haven't even touched on the financial stuff, which is
I know. And there's so much to talk
I know,
about,
right?
isn't
There's so
there?
much there, and I just
Yeah.
will so we'll definitely do this again. But
Great.
yeah, the so I do, I always ask every guest, based on the name of the show, what is your why? I know you've sort of touched on it a little bit, but I want to give you the opportunity to expand kind of what's driving you, what's moving you forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Really, the norm in our society is to be sick, overweight, and unhappy, right? And so that means that if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're not going to feel good. And I'm not okay with that reality. I learned that when you follow all the rules, you that you think lead to success and health, you can lose who you are. And, so that really fuels a passion to be creating a new narrative around what health and success look like, and to just be creating change in vet med and beyond, where, we are all treating our body, listening to what our bodies are saying, prioritizing those basic necessities, and just creating a new narrative where health and success is something that gives you energy and makes your life easier. Um, that is what really fuels me, and certainly my personal experience with burnout. I don't want other vet professionals to experience that, and I now do see solutions for our profession, and that really fuels me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we have to find those solutions because as I, sort of talked about before, the numbers are dwindling. And I
They
don't
really
think
are.
people want less pets. So if we're gonna, sort of sustain the ability to care for them in a meaningful way, like we need people to want to be here. And I've mentioned it about my kids, and it's like part of me is like, I want I want to change things so that I would be okay with my kids follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's really like,
Yes.
I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel that I don't want my kids to kind of you know, see what daddy and mommy do, and not like not want them to be a part of, like not want them to be excited about that. Like my daughter
Yeah.
loves dogs, loves them. And I'm like, it scares me. I'm like, no,
I
just have them as
bet.
pets. Right. Like, and so
Right.
I would like to change that, the way that I think about it at this point. Um,
Yeah.
Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. Special skill, a hobby, anything you're comfortable sharing. Let listeners know you a little better.
Yeah. Well, so I guess something we didn't talk about during this episode is that I'm certified in integrative change work and hypnosis. And I think hypnosis is something that people hear and they think of like stage hypnosis. But that has been such an incredible tool that I now have for myself and for my clients. And I'm just like amazed by how quickly I'm able to be creating change. And that really is all about like connecting with the unconscious. When we think about like our conscious mind as maybe like 5% of like all the things
Yeah,
that are going on in our brain, and so much of what ends up depleting our energy and making our lives harder than it has to be are all from these unconscious, beliefs and biases and patterns and habits. And so that has been such a game changer for me, and a lot of fun just being able to um, see how quickly I can create change by connecting with the unconscious mind.
yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. I would be a little afraid to get hypnotized, but I think it's a really cool. But yeah, I think probably you mentioned stage hypnosis, probably what most people think of, like when they've seen it. But that's I can imagine it is very, very helpful for people to be, um, as you say, like access that subconscious mind and have and figure out kind of what's going on from within there.
There's so much wisdom there. And the other thing, just to add, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, hypnosis. No, one thing to know is that you are always in the driver's seat too. It's not like you're out of control. It's kind of like you're in the driver's seat, I'm in the back, and I'm giving you directions, and you get to decide if you want to go that way or not. But it can be a great way of really just getting past that like critical factor, that conscious brain, that judgmental brain, to really be connecting with what you need, changing habits. There's so much you can explore there.
Yeah, amazing. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so there are lots of ways. My email is amelia@lifeboost.today. I'm active on social media on Instagram. I'm at Life Boost with Amelia. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Definitely, the free Beat the Burnout series that I have there are 4 videos available to anybody in the veterinary community. And you can get access to that at www.lifeboost.today/beat burnout. And I also have a podcast, Life Boost with Amelia. Pretty much if you look up Life Boost with Amelia, you're gonna
We'll
find
be
me.
able to find you. Well, and we'll put
Yeah.
all that in the show notes too, so people can access it easily.
Great.
Um, well, this is so. The last question I normally ask people is give advice for someone starting out in real estate or business or something like that. But obviously, you need to reconfigure this a little bit. I want you to sort of give people advice for maybe the first steps they should take if they're feeling like they're in that kind of space of burnout. They're starting to notice the fogginess in the afternoon, or they're not eating right, or
Yeah.
they're having sort of anxiety attacks, whatever. You're starting to have these signs, whether they're mental or physical, within their bodies. What would you tell them to kind of set them on the right path?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is starting to shift out of survival mode and learning how to tell your body that you are safe. And I even have my favorite 1 minute anti-anxiety tool. That's a free resource. And I share 6 ways that you can be using that to really be creating positive change. So I think that is number one, because just helping your body to feel safe is going to give you so much energy. And also just starting to be aware of, like, what are the things that boost my energy and what are the things that drain it. And that can be even like different types of food, movement when you're out in fresh air, different aspects of your job. Just collecting data. Really, I always say embrace your inner researcher, collect data about yourself to learn about what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, take some of that hard work drive and put it towards yourself, I think, is a way,
Yeah.
people can we're all in that sort of I don't know, mindset of work, 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 work. And you just need to take some of that energy and put it towards yourself. And again, it's like that, filling your uh or getting the oxygen mask before you put it on someone else, or getting your own. So I
Oh,
I, uh, I'm so happy that we did this. I definitely do want to have you back again. Thank you so much for
awesome.
coming on the show and talking about everything. There's so much more here that we can talk about, but this was a
Yeah.
phenomenal start. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Awesome. And folks listening, I know you're going to love this episode. Please like, rate, and review so we can get more guests, more great guests like Amelia. And we will have everything in the show notes so you can, especially if you're, in the veterinary community and any of this resonates with you, please check out all of her free resources and connect. So thank you all for listening. Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?